After a promising start to this past NBA season, the Boston Celtics, they pretty much remained one of the top teams in the East for majority of the year. They started off the year extremely high and they kept that same kind of play and that same playoff kind of atmosphere going throughout the whole season, and it appears they didn't skip a beat after losing in the finals to the Warriors just months prior to this season beginning. Despite a pretty good year, once it got to the playoffs, things became a little bit shaky. They did finish the Hawks pretty fast, but if anybody was paying attention, Trae Young was having his way with this team, and this is a team that hangs their hat on the defensive end with the reigning DPOY who was guarding Trae Young for a majority of these games. As I said, they did skate by them, so it didn't really show any cause for concern at the moment, but then when they got to round 2, it started to see a little bit more concern, but this time more specifically on the offensive end, and with Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown being a bit inconsistent. Now granted, Jaylen Brown was the guy in large part that helped lead them to the Eastern Conference Finals and pick up where Jayson Tatum was lacking. Now despite Jayson Tatum's, I guess you would say, lackluster or down playoff performance, I still believe he's a top 10, maybe even top 5 player in this league, and I genuinely think that this doesn't define him, it won't define him, and going forward he is going to be a lot better. He just needs to start incorporating the mid-range game a bit more like he did earlier in his career. In the last 3 years, he's been getting away from the mid-range game more and more as the years went on, and it's shown to have an effect in his game. There's times where he doesn't want to slash and drive to the basket, and in those in-between moments, those are the times that you should be doing dribble pull-ups, turnaround jumpers, facing up, posting up, different ways to score that he's actually very talented at, especially with the post game. He hasn't really been doing it as much. He's fallen in love with the three like the rest of this team, and it pretty much doomed them in the Eastern Conference Finals when they're playing a team like the Heat who is not only hitting these shots but also defending you so well that you're taking difficult shots to where you're not hitting at the same clip that you normally hit at. At this point, this team is lacking in a couple of areas, and I don't think it's too hard to fill the holes or fill the gaps in those areas that they're lacking in. They traded their point guard, a reigning DPOY Marcus Smart, for Kristaps Porzingis, a first-round pick, 4 future seconds, and before the draft, they only had 1. And all they had to ship out along with Marcus Smart was Mike Muscala and Danilo Gallinari. So safe to say, they did pretty well, especially because they brought in some picks as opposed to giving some away. Some of their notable free agents are Grant Williams, Blake Griffin, and JD Davidson. Now, I fully expect Grant Williams to sign somewhere else. Now, it's not because he doesn't fit with this team. I just believe there are moments where he isn't an ideal player for this team, strictly because on the defensive end, he's not quick enough. His lateral movement is not there, and there's times where he gets beat off the dribble. It causes the whole defense to get out of whack, and now you got to live with it, strictly because you have a guy on the court that you want to catch and shoot. And it's not really working out for them, not for Grant Williams either. So I think Grant Williams, it'll be best for him to have a new change in scenery, a new place, a new uniform. With that being said, I would let Blake Griffin walk, and I'm keeping JD Davidson because we just drafted him. We got to see what he got, what he could develop into, and not for nothing, in the G League, he has played pretty well, so you can give him some time to develop still. The fact that most of their notable free agents aren't really the major core pieces, that helps them in the long run, because in terms of bolstering their roster, all they really need to do is look at outside sources such as free agency or trading some assets that you're not worried about moving off of because you're in a win now state, and that includes some of those draft picks that you got for Marcus Smart, which is why that move was so smart for the Boston Celtics, because now you have draft equity that you can change and you can flip into another veteran or playmaker, which is exactly what the Boston Celtics are missing and what they need, which goes into one of my further points with regard to the Kristaps Porzingis trade. My whole thing about the Kristaps trade is, did the Celtics need something? Yes. Does Kristaps Porzingis feel that need exactly? Not necessarily. Now, it does not hurt, especially in the NBA. It never hurts to add more talent to your team. Add someone that is a pretty good defender. He has great length at a 7'2", 7'3" frame, and he's a guy that can space the floor and was a shot creator early in his career. He got away from that as of lately, but he was very good at creating his own shots, and we could see that same thing in Boston, especially with the doubles that'll be thrown at Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Jaylen Brown. But my overall point is, I don't think Kristaps Porzingis was the kind of guy that the Celtics needed. Great trade in my eyes regardless, but with that being said, above all else, you need a true playmaker. And I'm not gonna lie, you might want to sign Pritchard, bring him back, have him be that bench guy coming off the bench to be your main playmaker. I know Pritchard, he wants to be in a role where he's a starter, and I think that's more than likely gonna happen where he leaves. He's probably not gonna get extended. But with that being said, I don't think Kristaps Porzingis quite moves the needle for this team, strictly because this team wasn't looking for skill. They don't really need skill or talent on this team. They need a true playmaker, and they need somebody that is really gonna take control of this team, of this offense, and really is an extension of the coach going forward. I genuinely thought they would actually go for a Chris Paul kind of deal, looking to getting him. Now that Chris Paul has landed in Golden State, I'm not quite sure where they're looking for in terms of a playmaker. That's really all it comes down to for them. Now, there are some free agents out there like Javon Carter, who I've mentioned for a couple teams that do need a playmaker. He would be perfect for this Boston team. He can score. He showed us that this past year. I believe he had a 50-point game. Correct me if I'm wrong. And he could dish the rock. He's always been able to do that. That's actually his primary thing in my eyes. Now, on the reverse end of the Porzingis trade, Al Horford is aging, and I get that. And when I think about it even further, pairing Kristaps Porzingis with Time Lord, it sounds magnificent in my opinion. So I can understand if you're looking for a trade to get Horford out while getting a veteran guard in. That might be smart. That might behoove you. And I'm not a Celtics fan. I'm a Lakers fan, so take this with a grain of salt. You might be able to go out and go get D'Lo if y'all really want him. I'm gonna tell you now, he's not a playoff riser. He's not even close to a riser, but he could play make and win you some games in the regular season. Now, at this point, the Celtics have three bigs. With three bigs, you pretty much know Al Horford is all but out, especially with the fact that he's nearing 40 years old. But at the end of the day, he is still a pretty valuable player. Now, his play dropped off significantly in the playoffs, which kind of hinders him and kind of hinders his hopes to come back. But regardless, he is a player that he can do some things for you, especially from a veteran standpoint. In terms of other players that they need to extend, they really only have Malcolm Brogdon and Derek White to worry about. I think those should be their priority in terms of extensions and in terms of who you're going to retain on this team. Past that, you do have Pritchard, which I already said he's probably going to walk. But regardless, this team is very formidable. Their foundation is solid going forward. It's only going to take a couple rotational pieces here and there. They've arguably been one of the most well-rounded teams in the league for the past year and a half, 2 years or so, on paper at least, and likely to come into this year, they're probably going to be the same aside from Denver. Despite a disappointing loss in Game 7, we do have to keep in mind Jayson Tatum getting hurt very, very early. That possibly doomed them and why Miami ended up winning that series. Now, personally, I believe that if Jayson Tatum didn't get hurt as early as he did and he was able to play a full game fully healthy, I think Miami was doomed. But regardless of what you think, whether it's subjective or objective, the Celtics are my favorite in the East coming into next year, barring some major free agency moves or trades throughout the rest of the offseason for other teams. The Celtics have a roster that is so strong and the foundation is very strong. The only question mark that I really have with regard to that foundation is Jaylen Brown. And we all know that they've shopped Jaylen Brown a couple times, which is pretty alarming and I think is disrespectful to Jaylen Brown and what he's done for this team and the city. From a business standpoint though, I understand it because now Jaylen Brown had a career year and his value is at its peak at this point. And if you could get a couple pieces for Jaylen Brown, I don't see why not. And that might just be me wanting to see Jaylen Brown somewhere else and be the number one. I talked about this in a video not too long ago, and it's probably not going to happen. So I'm going to just preface that by saying that you could try and sign and trade Jaylen Brown for Damian Lillard. Dame is now a player that is a true playmaker, but can also shoot the hell out the rock in Boston, which we know they like to shoot. Jaylen Brown goes to a team where he's pretty much their vet. vet now. Now, it's difficult to do a trade like that because you got Shaedon Sharpe and you just drafted Scoot Henderson, so that makes it even more harder. So you could also do something else like Jaylen Brown for Tyrese Halliburton. That's another one that I came up with that I think if you can make the money work and things like that, because I didn't do the logistics, obviously we're not here for that. But regardless, if you have Tyrese Halliburton in the place of Jaylen Brown and you got Kristaps Porzingis to be that third guy for their big three, so to speak, I think the Celtics can make noise. Now, regardless of if they do that or not, I still think they're going to make noise. They're a great team. Joe Mazzulla is only going to get better as a coach going forward. And Jaylen Brown, even though he had an issue with his left hand in last year's playoffs, that's an easy fix. I don't think people are realizing that, and they're underestimating how easy of a fix it is to fix dribbling with your left hand. All it takes is getting in the lab and dribbling with your left hand, whereas shooting and other skills, they take longer, and even in some instances, they take having a defender in front of you. Regardless, the Celtics are in a position to continue being great going forward. They just need to get over the hump. It was unfortunate that they saw a hungry dog like Miami team, because I feel like they would have won and would have been in the finals once again. However, next year it's gonna be their time and they're gonna be in the finals out of the East. And if you're watching this video right now, mark my words, the Celtics are gonna be in the Eastern Conference Finals. They're gonna be in that same position again, and this time they're gonna win. I'm not gonna say they're gonna win the finals, but I know they're gonna at least go there. Let me know what you guys think about the Celtics below. Let me know what you think about their offseason and what moves they should make going forward. If you're new, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. This is gonna be the first iteration of my offseason preview series. I'm attempting to do 30 teams in 30 days for the month of July. This is number 1, so stick around. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what I could do better as we progress along this series. And as always, it is your boy TB with the greatest hoop stories and debates on the tube, and I'm out. Peace.